Hello everyone and welcome back to Your Year of Tarot. We are on Lucky Lesson 13 and today we are getting introduced to the Court of Swords, our air element and its ruling house. So get comfy, get cozy, grab your deck and let's get started. Upon meeting this suit, when we've got all four of those cards laid out, our Page of Swords, Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords and King of Swords, we can see the air element strongly throughout it, immediately at a glance with all the clouds, the birds, the depiction of the wind. There's a lot happening and it feels very dynamic. There's a lot of movement in this. So if you'll remember from last lesson, our introduction to the court cards, the way we work out the meaning is we take the rank, then we add the suit, and that is the meaning. Obviously, you can use your own intuition in this as well. We've talked many times about how if the artwork of your deck is different, it's going to slightly change the meaning for you. And also if you were brought up in a different culture with a different set of symbology, that will also change the meaning for you as well. So add your intuition in there, add your own background, and see what meaning you get. In our lessons so far, all throughout the Minor Arcana, we used a singular method that is going to continue throughout the court cards, where we looked at the main elements, we looked at the nuance and had a discussion, and then we see what questions arise in the card, and from that we can derive the meaning. We will be carrying this method forward throughout the court cards as well. It's something that you're comfortable with and familiar with if you've been doing the last lessons as well. Why fix what's not broken? Throughout the swords, we are looking at the element of air. Air is ideas, intellect, communication and conflict. We will see how these themes translate throughout the court cards. Oh, that's still really hot. If you're wondering what tea I've got, this is my own blend. It's called Quiet Mind and it's in my For the Love of Plants video there if you want the recipe, but it's a really chill out tea and I like to use it to relax the mind and the body. Each week I will show you also the same court but in a different deck, so you can get an idea of different art styles and the way that different decks will change up the court cards. So at the end I will show you the court cards from the Suit of Swords of the Druidcraft Tarot deck so you can see the differences and get a little bit of an idea of how this one changes it from the original meaning. But let's get straight into these cards, our Rider-Waite-Smith court cards, and unpick their mysteries. First we've got our Page of Swords. The first thing to remember is our element that we're in. We're in the element of air, so we've got communication, ideas, intellect, conflict. The next thing with the court cards that you need to remember is their rank. In the Minor Arcana with the pip cards, you had element and then numerology. Now we've got element and rank. There's no numbers here, we don't need to use numerology. So the rank of the page are inexperienced learners. Naive, but young and energetic and hopeful in a way that all new beginners are. They're learning about the world and they're learning about themselves and their place within society as a whole. So what's the main elements that we can see in this card? So we have a figure holding a sword pretty loosely. They're not in a fighting stance, they're not gripping it tightly. It's a fairly loose hold. There's wind swirling very heavily around them. We've got a lot of very dense clouds. There's a flock of birds circling above their head and they're in pretty simple clothing. Nothing major happening. At first glance, you can't really tell what it's trying to say, and this is what confuses people about the court cards. As we mentioned in the last lesson, you've got to do a little bit more digging in these ones, but they are well worth it. Let's look at the nuance of this card and see what the card is trying to actually tell us. The figure is holding the sword lightly over their shoulder. It's not with a strong decisiveness. It's not someone throwing the swords, it's not someone defending themselves, but they are still holding it. The sword is the representation of their idea, their intellect, or the thing that we are trying to learn. They are holding on to this thing. They are trying to learn about it. This character looks into the distance. Perhaps they're looking around them, perhaps they're looking behind them. It's not immediately clear at the offset of this card, but he's in a very loose kind of stance with his one leg out behind him. It looks almost like a dancing sort of position. There's a bit of playfulness in this card. The wind is swirling. We can see that it's beginning to pick up in this card. That becomes clearer as we go through the suit of swords. But the clouds are forming behind them. You can see that there's wind on the trees in the background. There is a lot of movement happening. The birds at the top flocking immediately remind me of a murmuration. And the birds in a murmuration are starlings. Starlings are representative of community, communication, adaptability, and unity, all of which feed in to the theme of the swords, especially that communication aspect. The Page of Swords is an idea, the beginning of our air element, the beginning of the idea, the first steps of something. He's also a student in the most student way. That learning, asking questions, trying new things, figuring out how it is that they learn. The Page of Swords is the most student of any of the pages. It is typical student, academic, intellectual, learning, asking questions, trying new things. The faces are neutral in the majority of the Rider-Waite-Smith cards for a very good reason. Is he looking out into the distance longingly? Is he looking around himself fearfully? Is he angry? We don't know what he's feeling. This kind of lends into the questions part of it. But the main thing to remember is he's looking anywhere but at the sword or in the direction of the sword. So if that is the representation of the idea, he is holding on to it, but he's looking away. He's asking for guidance and seeking guidance from people outside of himself. It's like he's holding onto the sword and he's looking around like, is someone going to tell me what to do here? That learning and not knowing. But there's also a very possessive quality to the way he's holding the sword, the way I feel it's kind of over the chest. It's almost like looking around defensively. Is someone going to take this from me? What would it mean if they took it from me? I've just got this. Why would someone want to take this from me? That possessive quality is giving us this kind of underlying combative energy within the card. I focus a lot on his little pointed toe at the bottom of the card, his little leg doing its cutesy thing. And when I look at that and him holding the sword, I get this feeling of dancing, especially with all the the clouds in the background. And to me, it really feels dreamy. Like a dreamy sense has kind of come over him. It feels playful, it feels joyful, it feels new and exciting. And this card also really reminds me of the Fall, straight away. It looks like the Fall. The main difference is when you look at the Fall is looking upwards. He's looking up at the sky. There is more faith in his new idea, his new beginning, and his new journey. Whereas the Page of Swords is looking around him. He's looking for something tangible to hold on to or someone to ask. So what questions arise from the card? Firstly, what is he looking at? When he's looking around, who's there? Is anyone there? Is he alone? How does he feel while holding the sword? Does he feel possessive? Does he feel excited? Does he feel playful? What's he doing right now? Is he fighting? Is he dreaming? Is he wondering? Is he defending? There's a lot of questions that come up because this card purposely doesn't give us much to work with. The point of that is that we interpret it in one of two ways. The main upright meaning of the card is someone who is curious, studious, a dreamer. Someone who is going forward and learning things, actively taking part in their learning and dreaming about what could be. And then when we reverse the card, we're looking at someone who's defensive, possibly someone that plays the devil's advocate a lot, but through a position of trying to understand a situation from many different angles when maybe they don't quite understand it. And when it's reversed, that intelligence and that curiosity can come across as manipulative. If I ask the right questions to the right person, maybe they'll just tell me or just do it for me. There's a level of avoidance in the learning when we reverse it, whether that's known or unknown to the page himself. Let's move on to the Knight of Swords. The rank of the knight is action orientated, emotional, high energy. They know how to get started, but lack the wisdom of experience and sometimes can get themselves into trouble. Think of the phrase charging ahead. Maybe not as much is happening in the head as we'd like there to be in that moment. But what's the main elements of this card? We have an armor-wearing knight holding the sword in front of him and high above his head. He's riding a galloping horse. There's heavy winds, clouds whipping past, cloak flying, and possibly a break in the sky. What does that mean? Let's look it down. Let's start with the break in the sky. When we look at the Page of Swords, you can see that sky is blue and clouds are this kind of parchment colour. And we have the same here. Sky is blue, clouds are a parchment colour, but then we've got a lot of white. When we look at the Queen of Swords, sky is blue, clouds are parchment. When we look at the King of Swords, the sky is white, the clouds are parchment. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, these are intentional. The way I read the blank space that is behind the knight here, I read it as literally a gap in the card, a gap in space, a gap in thought. That gap could be a place that peace and stillness exists, which is, when we come back to the King of Swords, that's kind of how I see it in there, the white sky, a level of peace, a level of stillness. But that is rushing past him. You can see the jagged edges just as the clouds are whipping past him. The trees are nearly on their side here. They are blowing right over. The wind is whipping up the mane of the horse, his cape. There is a lot of energy here. And that gap in the sky is telling us that kind of peace, that stillness, that stopping moment, that is behind us. That is gone. We are moving straight through that. The knight riding so swiftly in all the air is momentum, it is movement. That's a really nice and easy bit to see. All of the knights have a horse. The symbology of the horse in general is freedom, power, vitality, and endurance. Horses are a pretty universal symbol for these general things, but they will change slightly by culture and what the horse is doing. The horse being kind of in that galloping flight mode, that does mean freedom and vitality. So it's kind of doubling down on that aspect of the horse symbolism. The sword is held aloft above his head, and he is looking directly in the direction that he's holding the sword. He is going head first. If this is ideas, communication, intellect, he's going head first into what it is that he is moving towards. But possibly this is not thought all the way through. Can also be quite combative. He looks like he's riding into battle, but there's no army next to him or behind him that we can see at least. He is riding alone, head first into something. Can also mean being very combative in your communication, being angry, being hot-headed. And one tiny detail is important to note that you are going to see throughout the Court of Swords going forward is the butterflies. So the butterflies are on the horse's bridle thing. The butterflies are on that of the horse. Here. Butterflies are a symbol of transformation, rebirth. They can also be a symbol of the soul. There's a lot in butterfly symbology, and that is another one that can change depending on where you are. But overall, especially in Rider-Waite-Smith, we're using it as a symbol of rebirth. And another tiny detail to see is that we have got less birds now. Birds in general mean freedom, and we've got a lot of them in the page. There's a lot of freedom when you're learning. You're not really held accountable for much because people understand you're a beginner. The knight is further through that journey. He is far from mastering it, but he knows enough that he can be held accountable for his actions. We have less birds because at this point we have less freedom and more responsibility when we're learning and implementing our own ideas. What are the questions that arise in this card? Well, what is he fighting for or against? Where is he going? Is he going alone? And was that a choice of his? Why does he ride out with such swiftness? What is the driving force behind him? The upright meaning of this card, swift, decisive action, moving very, very quickly towards your goal, possibly going in a little too quickly, maybe with not enough thought into it. This is also a card of rebellion. Rebellion against ideas that maybe have been set out for you, maybe rebellion against something of yourself, maybe rebellion against the teachings, that you had started to undertake in the Page of Swords. It is a direct focus, blocking out all else. And that can be to your benefit, but it can also be to your detriment. The Knight of Swords reversed is aggressive, combative, arrogant, manipulative, possibly hurting or forgetting people by paying so much attention onto the outcome of a goal or to themselves that they miss what's really important. Reversed is also the failed rebellion. He tried to rebel. Maybe he rebelled against the wrong thing. Maybe he rebelled at the wrong time. Maybe he rebelled and regretted it, but it is a failed rebellion. Let's move on to our Queen of Swords. I love her. I do. Rank, Queen. Queens are more emotional, spiritual and grounded. They have wisdom from a deep inner knowing, and they have intuition behind them. They are creative and nurturing of themselves and others. I think of all the swords, the Queen has the most happening in her card. Let's start by breaking it down. Let's look at the main elements. The Queen sits on a throne, holding a sword pointing up, but the hilt is resting on the throne. It's at rest. Clouds, but the wind is easing. Regal finery, facing off to the right, possibly looking towards the king. When you lay these cards out, Page, Knight, Queen, King, she does look like she's looking towards the king. And there is a single bird in flight. What does this mean? Let's break it down. When I see this card, the first thing that comes to mind is the way she's holding the sword is reminiscent of our Ace of Swords. The hand that is coming from the sky passing the sword out to us. We don't know where this hand comes from, but we know it's a form of creative inspiration. We know it's a new idea and intellect. This is her passing on her knowledge to someone else. This is giving away an idea, a thought. It can be teaching, it can be nurturing. But with her hand up and the way she's resting the sword on the chair, it looks like she's passing a ruling, giving a judgment. She knows what she believes in, she knows what she wants, and she's able to balance creativity, desire, and spirit to get a very well-rounded and wisdom-filled answer to whatever question it is. Again, going back to how she's sitting with the sword on the throne, it's relaxed. She's not holding it up, she's not straining, she's not stressing, there's no anger and drive. This is relaxed. It's a confidence, an inner confidence from the decision that she's making. On the throne itself, we have a carving here that appears to be a cherub or an angel of some kind. It looks very traditional cherub-like. The cherub in symbology has two meanings because the cherub has evolved over time. In its earliest Christian counterparts, it was a guardian, and it was very strong, very fearful, like something to be feared, quite a menacing creature. But over time, as its art kind of blended with the Greco-Roman Cupid, it became this more cutesy figure with the chubby cheeks and the wings, and it all kind of blended to cherub and Cupid being the same thing. The dual meaning of this is that the cherub is a guardian, but also a symbol of that pure and innocent love. And with the Queen, that is kind of that pure and innocent, motherly kind of love, but also the guardianship that comes from mothers and that need to protect. It's the mothering instinct. Now, when we say that, the Rider-Waite-Smith cards are traditionally very gendered. Take it more as a state of being and an archetype rather than the gender itself. People who are traditionally reading might also read the Queen of Swords as conception, as in physical conception and pregnancy, but you can read it as conception of an idea. She's passing a judgment and a ruling. With one hand, she's giving out her own knowledge and ideas, but she's also a guardian figure, and she has that pure, loving respect for people, purely for their existence, not because of what they can do for you. There is a very queenly, motherly aspect to this card. We have continuing the butterfly motif. It's on the crown, it's on the bottom of the throne here. So that rebirth and transformation. What's interesting is her cloak has clouds on it, just as there are clouds in the sky around her. That is a blending of the outer world and the inner world. This is balance in the outer world and the inner world. Overall, this is a very grounded, balanced card. And then the last thing is that single bird right at the top. Now, I read this as a bird of prey, as they tend to be the ones to hunt alone. Birds of prey have many different associations, obviously depending on the bird. We've got just a tiny little outline here, but overall, I read it as vision, as in the bird of prey flies very high and looks down and can see a huge piece of land and all of the details in it to the point of the tiniest mouse, and can make informed decisions while flying hundreds of feet above the air. And that's what the Queen is doing, passing that knowledge, that judgment, that expertise, but from a place of a high vantage point, in that she can observe the whole situation for all of the details. She can take in the emotional, she can take in the spiritual, she can take in the practical before making a decision. She's balanced. So what questions come up from this card? Firstly, who is she talking to? Is it the king? Is it us? Is it another person? Who is she guiding? And then what is she saying? What rule is she passing? And what in her makes her feel so comfortable about the rule that she's passing? Overall, this card upright is integrity. Feeling very comfortable in the choices that you're making. Being able to make rulings objectively. This is a very clear-headed card, especially when upright. The easiest way to remember the meaning of this card is to think as that tiny little bird that's right up here in the corner, surveying the whole area, making decisions while taking everything in. Clear-headed, clear judgments, made with a very strong sense of self. When we reverse this card, those judgments suddenly become far more critical. And they become judgments in the most negative sense of the word. Not judgment as in a ruling on a case with all of the facts given. This is judgment of, you are this way because da-da-da-da-da. It's combative. It's non-communicative as well when we're reversed. The air, our swords, are all about communication. The Queen's a good communicator until we get her reversed. Non-communicative, judgmental, combative, very, very critical of the situation. Maybe not taking all the points in because now the bird is all the way down here. So she's not taking everything in from high up above and seeing the whole picture. Finally, let's move on to our King of Swords. Rank, King. Solid, capable, and in control leaders. They have the experience behind them and a solid foundation for their emotions and sense of self. They are stable, so they can protect and direct their suit, their element. So what's the main elements in this card? Well, you've got the figure that sits on the throne holding a sword in one hand, but he is holding it up, so he's not fully at rest the same way the Queen was. The sky is completely white, apart from the clouds. There are two birds in the sky here, and the clouds aren't moving that far. They seem to be lazing throughout the sky. It's not a very heavy wind anymore. And he's wearing relatively simple robes. A white robe, brown cape, there's bits of red in there, and he's got the crown just as before. So what's the card trying to tell us? Let's look at the nuance. Let's start with the themes that have been going throughout the whole suit. We've got the butterflies are on the throne behind him. It almost looks like butterfly wings on his crown, but not quite there. There is still rebirth and transformation happening. Just because you get to the point of mastery of a suit, of an idea, of a skill, it doesn't mean that you're actually ever done learning or trying. The two birds in flight, as we've had birds so far, they are balance and harmony. The sky is completely white, as we saw that little flash of white in the Knight of Swords over here, but he is rushing past it. Here he sits with the white background in what feels like a great peace, serenity, a very inner calm. The wind is not heavy, it's not an inner chaos, it's not lots of ideas rushing around his head. There's a quiet certainty in the way that he sits on this throne with the white sky in the background, that peace, that inner knowing, that ready to start again from a completely blank slate. The king has reached a level of mastery over their element. Communication, ideas, intellect, conflict. When we say he's reached a mastery from time, from wisdom, from experience, from having a lot of fallbacks on the journey and moving forward did the king get to this position? As he moves through to protect his suit, he's also the protector and possibly the teacher to the youngest page here to start their journey. The page starts as this kind of naive youth before gaining some responsibility and diving headfirst, probably to his own detriment, retaining a sense of peace and balance by being able to look at all parts of yourself and then being able to sit in that and direct and guide others. I see the King of Swords as generally quite a peaceful, aligned card, aligning of ideas and action, aligning of communication, intent and style, and that's all come from experience. What questions come from this card? Really, there's not that much. What's he thinking right now? He is staring directly at us. What is he asking of us? I really look at the King of Swords and I feel like he's trying to ask me something, but I just don't know what it is. And so when he comes up in a reading, it's really lovely to pull some clarifying cards and see what's actually being asked of you. Upright, the king is disciplined, logical, analytical. His decisions have come from observing all sides of an argument. He has an ability to quiet his emotions and look at something from a very logical perspective. He himself went through the journey from the page through to becoming the king. He went through each stage of being and learning and growing to get to this point. That took discipline, that took intellect, that took learning, asking for help, falling back and not being afraid to get up and try again. This is what happens when you've reached mastery over one of these aspects. Reversed, the king becomes much more oppressive, controlling, very much a my word is law type. It can come across as cold and unfeeling, and suddenly that white background isn't a lovely, peaceful, calm sky. It's cold and it's clinical, and there's no emotion taken into account whatsoever. It's a word of law over what is morally right. That was your Court of Swords. I hope it wasn't too scary. Let's quickly have a look at the Court of Swords from the Druidcraft Tarot deck. We're not going in depth on all of them. We're just going to have a little bit of a look at them compared to each of the current tarot cards. And then we'll move on to a quick little summary like we do in each lesson. When a court changes page and knight to prince and princess, some of them will do prince as the page and princess as the knight, and some will do princess as the page and prince as the knight. It fully depends on the deck. But we have the Princess of Swords, who is our page. They've changed this card slightly by having a sword held downwards. There is only one bird and she is on a field of flowers, but that wind is still very much there. Prince of Sword is still riding his horse. They've taken away the butterfly motif across these cards. The Queen of Swords still faces off to the side. She is sat slightly differently, but she has a very serene look on her face that still takes across the main meaning of the Rider-Waite-Smith one. And the King of Swords is a lot more contemplative in this suit, which I really love. And I like that they've included all of the blues through this one as well. If you do really like this deck, I do sell it through my website if you'd like to help a girl out. But let's move on to the summary. Quick 1 or 2 word summaries for each card. So we'll start with our Page of Swords. Upright is dreams and reversed is defensive. Our Knight of Swords upright is decisive action, whereas reversed is combative. The Queen of Swords upright is clear-headed. The reversed is judgmental. King of Swords upright is analytical. The reversed is controlling. Homework. Let's move on to your homework, optional as always. This week, I would like you to find which of the court cards in our Suit of Swords you embody most or relate to the most, and what one you relate to the least. You can choose to do this any way you want. I'm going to give you an example on how to do this and the way I like to do it. Some people will like to sit and meditate on the cards, and their meaning and see what they feel most drawn to. I like to do a couple journal prompts, and then from the answers, see, and what we've learnt today, see which one that you lean closer to. So to do that, grab a journal, piece of paper, you can type it out, you can voice note it to yourself, and answer just a couple questions. What is my relationship to school versus learning? How do I perceive my communication? What have others told me? What rules do I set for myself and why? Write out your answers, train of thought, don't think much of them. And then just kind of highlight the key points and themes. Maybe you think you're quite a patient communicator and someone's told you you can be snappy. Maybe you think you come across as snappy and people have told you you're patient. Maybe you really love learning and were never good at school. Maybe you set rules for yourself thinking they'll help you be more productive and then you don't stick to them. Have a little look at what these ideas surrounding the air element mean for you, and then have a look at which court card embodies those answers the most, and see if there's one that you feel you really don't relate to, because you'll learn a lot from a card that you have an instant repelling from. If you look at a card and you're like, oh, I don't really see that, I don't really see myself in that, I don't really relate to it, really have a look at that card because you can really learn from it. Well done for 13 weeks of tarot, taking your first steps into the court cards, and I will see you next week when we're going to be meeting our Court of Pentacles, our ruling house of the earth element. So have a lovely rest of your day wherever you are, and I'll see you next week. Have a great one, guys. Bye.